Hey guys, welcome back to another Spy Family Sunday. Today I'm here to talk about chapter 101 of Spy Family. We are continuing with the backstory with Martha and Henry and the war between Astania and Westalis. I feel like Indo Sensei is really bringing forth the devastation and the cost of what war actually means. So before we get into the chapter, if you're new to the channel here, please feel free to like, subscribe to the channel, definitely leave me a comment because I like discussing the chapters after these videos go up. So the chapter starts off with a map basically showing Martha's travels. When she fell into the water, after they retreated from the front lines, Martha was basically floated like upstream. So, I mean, she was getting further and further away from her safe zone. And so she's walking around, she's like, I'm tired, I'm hungry, like maybe I can get some food with the money that Annabelle gave me. And so Martha comes across this, I guess, ration store or food store. The clerk there is saying, oh, we only, most of our rations have gone to the soldiers, do you have a rations card? Since she doesn't have one, she's thinking that this is automatically suspicious, so she like, oh, I can't believe I forgot that, let me go home and grab it. And so she leaves and she's sort of hiding. There's posters everywhere that says, hey, Estonian soldiers are in the wind, they're looking to loot and steal. If you come across any of these people, turn them in immediately. Martha's just thinking about everything that could have happened to her, and she thinks about those two men that were chasing her through the forest. And so she hides away in like a farmhouse, and she's cutting her hair because she wants to look like a boy. And she apologizes to Annabelle. I'm sorry that I'm leaving your daughter's clothes here, but Martha has to be smart because if she's caught, then obviously she's gonna be killed. And so she's just following the map that Annabelle gave her, and she's like, how am I supposed to get back to Estania? She's in the middle of this farmland, and she's sitting looking at this map. There's an old man that comes across her, and he's like, oh, you're never gonna find your way with a map like that. Martha's like, oh, my grandmother gave it to me. And the guy is telling her, you better be careful so that's not confiscated by the military. So Martha continues on her journey, and she's walking and walking and walking, and she's progressively getting weaker because she hasn't had food, she hasn't had water, she's essentially lost. And she passes out along the side of the road, and she hears an engine, and some soldiers pull up, and they're soldiers from Westalis, and she's like, she can't even get up, like she's that weak. She's struggling to get up to try, I guess, to defend herself. One of the soldiers is like, hey, should we just put this guy out of his misery? Somebody says, nah, just let him be, the war's over. And so Martha's, I wouldn't say she's confused about it, but she's just shocked that, the war is over. And so she keeps traveling and traveling and traveling. She doesn't really remember anything that happened. She just remembers waking up and somebody's nursing her back to health, giving her some water. And the people that picked her up were soldiers from Astania. So, she's safe with these people. They're riding in the back of a truck, and, Martha's draped in this waterproof poncho thing it looks like she's wearing. There's a bunch of soldiers sitting around her. A lot of people are like sickly looking, bandaged up. A lot of people are coughing. So it's not the most sanitary conditions, but, at least she's alive and she's headed back home. Martha's thinking to herself, I can't believe there are so many other soldiers who hadn't made it home. And there's a guy in the group that's like, hey, you're Martha from the women's battalion, right? And he's like, I heard your whole group got taken out. And he's like, I'm sure glad that, you came back alive at least. And he offers her some water. There's another guy that speaks up, and he's like, we didn't win the war, but we didn't necessarily lose either. And he has a look on his face like he's not satisfied. He's conflicted because he's like, what was the point of any of it? Like, what were we fighting for? The guy that offered Martha some water is like, we were fighting to protect our homeland. Like, what are you talking about? Our homes, our families, like our cities, like, we protected Berlin. Martha agrees, and she's like, yeah, you're right. We protected our home. And he formally introduces himself. He's like, hey, my name is Paul, and I'm from Berlin. And Martha's like, oh, what a coincidence. Like, I am too. And, and so they're sort of getting along, and, and there's this narration where Martha's like, once they crossed the border, they all got onto a train to head back towards Berlin. Berlin. And so they're still traveling. You know, Paul seems like a nurturer. You know, he's going around the train and he's asking people like, hey, do you want some water? Here, take some water. So he likes taking care of people. And he's like, Martha, once we get back to Berlin, what do you say you and I get married? And Martha's like, what? And she like basically like she spits out all of her water because it's just such an out-of-pocket question. Because it's like, dude, we just met. You're asking me to marry you. Like, I understand, like, desperate times call for desperate measures, but it was a little out of nowhere. Martha, you know, lets him down gently. She's like, I can't, you know, my heart belongs to somebody else, you know, and Paul takes it pretty well. He's like, I get it, you know, all the more reason for you to make it home healthy. So they keep traveling. It's revealed that they're on this train for a couple of weeks, which is insane. So they're still on the train and they finally reach Berlin and everybody's excited. They're like, we're back in Berlin, like, yay. You get this haunting panel of Paul and he's sort of just sprawled out on the floor of the train. And Martha's like, Paul, you know, like, we're in Berlin, like, wake up. Another guy that's sitting next to her is like, don't bother, like, his body was cold last night. Apparently Paul like passed away. He, you know, he wasn't able to endure the weeks and weeks and weeks of being on the train. And it wasn't just him, there were other people that died as well. And the guy's like, anyway, we gotta get off the train. You know, Martha starts crying and she's like, it's not fair. You know, it's like we finally made it home and he dies before he gets to realize that he made it home. So that's really sad. And the last panel of the chapter is just Martha getting off the train. She's in the train station. You know, obviously she wants to go and see Henry, but it's kind of sad because us as the readers already know that Henry has married for the sake of his family. So man, I feel like the next chapter is going to be really devastating. I mean, the only thing that I can predict is that, you know, she finds Henry, or maybe she doesn't even talk to him, she just sees him with his wife and then she just walks away in the opposite direction. Like, that would be just super sad. You know, Martha's one of the few soldiers that made it back, the only one that made it back in her battalion, and you know, the only thing that was guiding her was Henry. It's like, I have to get home, I have to tell him how I feel. You know, now it's just too late. So I didn't expect Martha and Henry's backstory to be this sad, but of course, you know, when Endo wants to pull on your heartstrings, like, he will pull on your heartstrings. I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I'm not sure how much longer this arc is going to be. I would predict no more than 2 chapters, maybe 102, 103, before we move into the next arc, but next few chapters are going to be heavy. So but yes, I did enjoy the chapter. Lots of introspection in this chapter, lots of, you know, views of, you know, how war is devastating, soldiers questioning like, what was the point of doing all of this? Some people, the answer is easy, like Paul, you know, he's like, oh, you know, we had to protect Berlin, we had to protect our families, our homes, but for other soldiers, the answers don't come as easily, and I think that's something that is very interesting, and I'm glad that Endo is exploring that. So yeah, that was my review of chapter 101 of Spy Family. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and until next time, remember to be awesome and stay true.